Contract extensions, upgrades, and a nightmare weekend for some. This week I'm chatting all about the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix, so get ready, because you've been summoned to the Steward's office. Hello everyone and welcome back to the Steward's office. I'm Saira and this week we are chatting all about the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. F1 finally headed back to Imola and we haven't been there since 2022 because in 2023 the GP was cancelled due to flooding in the Emilia Romagna region. It was great to head back out there though. It's a home race for both VCARB and for Ferrari, so a lot of Tifosi and a lot of VCARB fans out there showing their support. I gotta be honest though, it was mainly Tifosi. It was just an absolute sea of red all weekend. It looked amazing. I love the Italian Grand Prix because the Italian fans are just so passionate about motorsport. They really bring their all and they love motorsport with their whole chest. It is amazing to see. But yes, we were back in Imola, back in Emilia Romagna. This kicks off the European leg of the F1 season, bar Canada, which is wedged in after Monaco. We've got a week break after Monaco, then we go to Canada, and then we carry on in Europe. But that's mainly because we can't fit Canada in later on in the season. The weather there is just awful, so this is prime time for Canada, really. But yeah, with the European season kicking off, it does mean that we get a lot of upgrades coming into all the teams because it's a lot cheaper and a lot easier for them to get the upgrades to the cars because pretty much all of the teams are based in Europe. Bar Haas, though, they do have some of their base out in America. Some of it's in Maranello, some of it's in the UK. They are spread out in 3 different places. But mainly a lot of the upgrades are done in and around Europe. Imola, though, always comes with a bit of sadness when we head back there because of the passing of Ayrton Senna and Roland Ratzenberger, which is 30 years since that happened this year. I think that 30-year anniversary just made it a little bit more poignant. It's always a sad affair going to Imola and remembering those 2 lives that were lost, but I think on an anniversary, like a 30-year anniversary, you really do reflect and think about that a little bit more. Sebastian Vettel was also there. He did a run in a old McLaren that Ayrton Senna had driven that he now owns. And he also organised a run around the circuit with the F1 drivers, F2, F3 and F1 personnel in tribute of Ayrton Senna and Roland Ratzenberger. So that was really nice to watch. It's always great seeing Seb back at the circuit. He has such an amazing power to unite the grid. I find they're always really happy to come and support him and to really unite behind what he is standing for and what he is trying to do for other people and in memory of other people. We did have a couple of bits of news coming out around F1 though, so let's kick off with those like usual. So we're going to start off with the fact that yes, Gunther Steiner is being sued by Haas. I think it was about 2 episodes ago now that I said that Gunther Steiner was planning to sue Haas over not being paid certain commission and also using his face and his likeness in their merchandise. Well, Haas have come back and have said that they are suing him because of his book. They said that there was a trademark infringement in his book, Surviving to Drive, and here's what the post actually said. In 2023, without permission or consent from Haas Automation, Steiner authored, marketed, promoted, sold, distributed, and profited from a publication titled Surviving to Drive, the accused product, which unlawfully used and displayed and continues to use and display the Haas Automation trademarks and Haas Automation trade dress for Steiner's personal financial gain and illicit profit. Haas Automation never consented to Steiner's use of the Haas Automation trademarks or the Haas Automation trade dress on the accused product. Look, I said when I spoke about the stuff about Gunther Steiner suing Haas that I don't know much about law, and surprisingly enough, nothing much for me has changed since then. I still don't know a whole load about law. I don't know what is going to happen here with Gunther Steiner and Haas and the countersuing and everything. Do I think that Haas would have sued Gunther if Gunther hadn't sued or tried to sue Haas first? No. I do think this is in retaliation to what Gunther is trying to do right now. Do I actually think there's a lawsuit here? That's what I don't know because I'm not a legal head, and also I don't know what's happened behind the scenes, right? Even if I did know law, I don't actually know the conversations that took place. So that is another wait and see. Even though Gunther is not in the sport, he is still making waves in F1 news right now. Now, the second piece of news comes from both Mercedes and Ferrari. we heard the announcement that both Jerome D'Ambrosio and Loic Saira are going to be joining Ferrari from this October. Now, this was news or rumours that were spreading, I want to say around March time. It was earlier on in the year, towards the beginning of the season, right? We had heard rumours that Jerome D'Ambrosio was going to be leaving Mercedes for Ferrari, but we hadn't heard anything official. Neither team had put out a statement saying anything, but we now officially know that they will both be leaving Mercedes to go and join Ferrari. For me, this does cause a couple of alarm bells. Jerome D'Ambrosio, I think, and look, this wasn't actually said in the media by Mercedes, right? But I think Toto was hoping that he would eventually take on a larger leadership role within the team. So I think at the moment he's sort of looking after their driver development program, and I'm pretty sure that was a role that James Vowles was looking after. And I know last season when Toto wasn't going to some of the races, he had Jerome D'Ambrosio in his place to look after the team and step in as team principal for those races, right? So it's a lot of responsibility and a lot of trust and respect that Toto must have had for him to put him in that role, right? He's going to be moving to Ferrari as vice team principal. So I think a lot like what he was doing when Toto wasn't around. If Fred can't make it to a race, if there are certain things that he's just not able to do, Jerome D'Ambrosio can step in. Loic Saira, yes, is also moving over same time as Jerome D'Ambrosio. He is part of the engineering team at Mercedes. He is going to become, I believe, the head of chassis performance there. So you've got someone that was doing more of your leadership role and someone who is also quite senior within your engineering team, both leaving for Ferrari. For me, where the alarm bells are really ringing with D'Ambrosio's exit. With Loic Saira, he's been at the team for about 11 years, over 11 years now, right? So I do understand him maybe wanting to pursue different challenges, try something new. D'Ambrosio, though, has only been with Mercedes since 2023. He's only done about a year with the team. He's not been there very long, or just over a year with the team by the time he leaves, right? And look, don't get me wrong, I get it. When Ferrari comes calling, why would you say no? Especially for the role that he's going to be given there. That's massive. However, yeah, after a year-ish, over a year, probably closer to 2 by the time he leaves, right? To have left the team and the place you were working for, it brings up a lot of questions for me. But like I said, we don't know the inner workings of Mercedes. We don't know what's going on there. So this is just speculation from the outside. I know James Vowles has said, obviously with him having worked there for years before he became team principal at Williams, that it's just the natural ebb and flow of teams. It's what happens. And you know what? Generally, I believe that, right? Because in Formula One, a lot of them will end up coming in and out of different teams up and down the grid. We won't always hear about it either, right? I think there have just been a lot of high-profile staff members leaving Mercedes. We're hearing a lot about people leaving and not so much about high-profile members joining the team per se. I do think they said that there were 2 members potentially from Ferrari joining the team. But yeah, I am just very curious about what's going on with the team right now and whether this is a sort of having to build from ground up again with everything that's happened with these set of regulations. So that's what's happened with Mercedes. And then final piece of news was a bit of contract extension news. Silly season is kicking off slowly, but one person I wasn't expecting to hear about this year in terms of a contract was Alex Albon. Now, his contract with Williams doesn't run out until 2025, the end of 2025, but Williams have opted to re-sign him with a contract extension for 2026, and I think beyond. I was slightly surprised to hear that news. I was surprised that Alex would want to sign that early and sign that contract extension. But for me, what this signals for Williams is, one, they have a lot of faith and a lot of trust in Alex Albon, and they want him there. They believe that he is their future, that he's really going to help push them further up the grid. They trust him. They believe in his consistency and the way he drives, and he is an incredibly strong driver. We've seen that. And for Alex, I think this really proves that he believes in what Williams are doing right now, and the faith they put in him when they brought him back onto the grid after having a year out. He's repaying that as well. He genuinely believes in what they're doing right now. I think what I was surprised at, though, is that Alex Albon is a high caliber driver. He has the potential for race wins and podiums, and Williams don't seem to be there. And I think there's a potential that it might take a little while to get there. So yeah, that is the news with Alex Albon. I am slightly surprised, but as long as it works out for him, great. And I am praying, and I've got my fingers crossed, that Williams are able to start building a more competitive car, because having a driver like Alex Albon in your team, he has the potential to get you so many points and to do so much for you guys, but he needs to have the car to do it. Looking at the upgrades, I mean, we had a lot of them, and we were expecting a lot of them because we were back in Europe. Aston Martin had the biggest upgrade package out of all the teams. They had about 9 different performance upgrade components on their car across both cars, and they had enough for spare. So they're a team that have really been working on their upgrades. After that, it was Ferrari with the most, and Ferrari, Fred Vasseur, the media, I feel, have spoken a lot about these Imola upgrades. There's been a lot of chat how it was this set of Imola upgrades that would bring the team closer to Red Bull. So there was a lot of hope put into those. Mercedes came with a couple more upgrades as well. I think those were the 3 most noticeable ones. And like I said, up and down the grid, there were still upgrades. McLaren had obviously introduced theirs in Miami, so I think they had more circuit-specific upgrades to bring to their car, more than performance-based ones. Heading into the actual race and the on-track action, though, and there just wasn't a whole load of it, to be honest with you, right? Throughout practices, it was Ferrari and McLaren that definitely looked like they had the pace, that they were going to be at the front in the weekend, because the Red Bull cars for both their drivers didn't seem dialed in. They just looked like they were really struggling, and you could see that when Max kept making, not mistakes because it was the car more than him, but kept having to go over the gravel traps. So it just wasn't smooth sailing for that team throughout free practice. Qualifying, however, you could see that they had dialed the cars back in. Max seemed way more comfortable and was setting times like we would expect him to. The absolute highlight of qualifying for me had to come in Yuki Tsunoda and Nico Hülkenberg. They both got into Q3, but had amazing runs throughout Q1 and Q2. On the other end of the spectrum, though, and who probably didn't have a great qualifying session, was Sergio Perez. He didn't manage to get into Q3. I don't know what happened. And once again, like I said, the car for Red Bull with Max Verstappen looked a lot better, but Sergio just didn't seem to be able to pull a lap together to get him into Q3. Going into the race, though, like I said, it was quiet for the vast majority of the race. Up until the last 10-ish laps, but before that, the biggest things that happened were all the issues with Alex Albon. Well, I say all, there was one issue. He'd gone into pit fairly early on in the race, had put hard tyres on, came out on track and was super slow. And it was because the Williams pit crew had not put Alex's tyres on properly. He ended up going back into the pits for a new set of tyres, but I don't think Williams had any more hard tyres left for him, so he was just having to go back in to swap out medium tyres. And on top of that, he also got given a 10-second time penalty for leaving the pits in an unsafe manner because the car wasn't safe with the wheels not being on properly. And then the other thing was Fernando Alonso. I mean, he had a bit of a nightmare of a weekend. He started in the pit lane, qualified 19th, started in the pit lane, and then his brakes were on fire at one point. And to be fair, he had said they were going to use the entire session as learning with their upgrades, understanding them a little bit better, and that was going to be it. They really weren't expecting him to race properly and get into the points, so nightmare for him. But all the action really came in the last 10 laps of the race, because Lando Norris, who was in Q2, had managed to catch up with Max Verstappen. Max had started to struggle with tyre wear. I think the balance of the car was a little bit off because of the way that the tyres were graining. And Lando had closed that gap. And I did think for about 2-3 laps, there was a chance that he would be able to catch him up, that we might actually see a battle for the race win, but it wasn't meant to be. Lando did close that gap, and it was amazing to watch that. He managed to get it down to just over 0.7 seconds, which I think is the smallest margin that Max Verstappen has now won a race by in 2024. So that in itself is incredible. But that was the only exciting part of the race, was right towards the end because of Lando Norris. Other than that, even in the midfield, at the back of the field, we weren't really seeing any kind of battles. So this was a pretty disappointing race for me. Max Verstappen did win though. Lando Norris was in second and Charles Leclerc took home third place. The Ferraris just seemed to lose their pace during the race, but it was Ferrari's first podium at Emilia Romagna since Michael Schumacher won there in 2006. Since its return to F1, Ferrari were not able to stand on the podium yet until this. Let's do a quick run through of all of the teams though and how I think they did. Red Bull, like I said, yeah, up and down weekend. It started out quite rough, but they managed to put it back together and Max Verstappen had no problem taking the win. I think he was a little bit nervous towards the end and I think he would have struggled for a couple more laps because of the tyre wear. But this wasn't a flawless weekend for them by any means. Sergio Perez not getting into Q3 and then, yeah, with them just struggling to get a handle on what to do with the car during free practice. Ferrari, I'm undecided. I can't tell whether the upgrades just weren't great for this circuit or whether they're just not having the desired effects, because they did struggle. Charles Leclerc for a little bit did look like he was catching up with Lando Norris, but just couldn't keep up that pace. I think he wore his tyres out a little bit too much, had gone through the gravel, made the tyres dirty and just fell back after that. Carlos Sainz was fourth before he pitted in front of Oscar Piastri, ended up falling behind Oscar Piastri into fifth and then was in no man's land for a while. He was literally just running his own race for that portion of it, like towards the end after that pit stop. He was just by himself. Not a great weekend for them. Still a good one. I mean, P3 is great to get those sort of points in the bank. This wasn't a great weekend for them. This wasn't the weekend that they were expecting, but I don't think it was bad by any means. It was still fairly good to get a podium. P3 and P5 are very good points to take home in the constructors and for both the drivers in the Drivers' Championship. Looking at McLaren, I mean, yes, this wasn't a win like Miami, but what it has shown is that their upgrades package is still working on different circuits, right? I think for Lando Norris to be under a second from Max Verstappen when he crosses the line is something that he and the entire team should be incredibly proud of. And if they keep working at it and they keep chipping away and they're bringing these small upgrades, big upgrades, wherever they've got planned next, there is a good chance that they're going to be battling for more wins and more podiums and really, really bringing that fight to Red Bull. So I think they've had a brilliant weekend. Mercedes brought upgrades, but like Ferrari, I can't tell if they made any kind of difference. They were in no man's land, racing their own race. Not much for them to do, really. There wasn't much for most of the cars to do, to be fair, but it's really hard to get a read on the upgrades here, I think. So Monaco, I don't think is going to be the best read other than if you're looking at one lap pace for qualifying. Race pace wise, I think we're going to just have to wait it out until Canada to see a lot of these upgrades. Aston Martin, on Fernando's side of the garage, it was a bad weekend. He crashed in FP3, couldn't get out of Q1, qualified in 19th, pit lane start, said the race was just for testing, had the brakes catch on fire, and then finished in 19th place. Lance, however, did finish in P9, so at least there were some points for the team. Once again, can't tell if these upgrades are working or not. VCarb, this I don't think was a bad weekend for them. There was insane speed, especially from Yuki Tsunoda, right? They finished in P10, and I was so badly hoping that Yuki would score some big points this weekend. I don't think they've got that race pace yet, and the starts for both Daniel and Yuki were really not great. Yuki lost 2 places, and I think Daniel lost 1, maybe 2 as well, right at the race start. And so that is something I think the team and the drivers will be looking at and will help them, especially on a circuit like Imola. And when we go to Monaco, where it really is position dependent, you can't overtake a lot, so you need to have a really good grid position. And when you're qualifying in Q3, you don't want to be losing those spaces then right at the start. Haas, Williams, Alpine, Kick Sauber, these were all teams I think that had a fairly quiet weekend. I mean, Haas, yep, great qualifying from Nico Hülkenberg, quiet other than that. Alpine managed to get both cars into Q2, which is good news for them. It looks like hopefully there's consistency in them getting out of Q1 at least now, but yeah, they didn't manage to score points. Williams, yeah, I mentioned everything with Alex Albon. Logan Sargent didn't manage to score points either. And on the topic of Logan, James Vowles has said that they are speaking to other drivers, which, I mean, I think we were all expecting that. He has told and has mentioned to Logan what he needs to do in order to keep his seat and what they expect of him and that he needs to perform better. But yeah, I think we could all tell that they were going to have to talk to other drivers at this point as well. And yeah, Kick Sauber, quiet, no points. I really can't remember hearing or seeing too much about Kick Sauber, to be honest with you. F1 does have a double header though, and we are heading out to Monaco this weekend. Crown jewel of Formula One, part of the Triple Crown. However, we know that this is a track where qualifying means a lot more than the actual race does. If you qualify well, you're going to tend to do well in the race because overtaking is difficult. Qualifying is a hell of a lot of fun to watch though. Drivers are literally on the edge of what they can do with their F1 car. It is rinsing every ounce of skill out of these drivers to perform, and that is so exciting to watch. Also, Charles Leclerc's home race. I am praying so badly this goes well for him. I would love to see him win, or at least on a podium if nothing else. So I am holding out hope for that. On top of Monaco, though, it is also the weekend of the Indy 500. And I've been watching IndyCar since last season now, and I absolutely love it. It's so competitive. There are so many different race winners. I love the way the scoring works in IndyCar. And the Indy 500, I watched it last year. It was incredible to watch. It's on straight after Monaco. I'm pretty sure Sky is starting the coverage once they finish the coverage of Monaco. So if you get the chance, if you're not doing anything on Sunday evening and you haven't watched IndyCar, watch the Indy 500. You will love it. But because IndyCar is on that evening and it is the Indy 500 and I do want to watch that live, I probably won't be recording my podcast until Monday evening. This is actually being recorded Monday evening after work as well. And that does mean that the episode might be out a little bit later than 9 a.m. It'll probably be towards the evening. Inshallah, fingers crossed that that'll be the case. Just because I want to be able to sit and really enjoy IndyCar, and I don't want to rush an episode either, so I can just go and watch it. So yes, there will probably be an episode, should be out on Tuesday, might be a little bit later, and if it's not out Tuesday evening, definitely Wednesday morning. Thank you guys so much for listening though, and diolch yn fawr. Make sure you follow me on TikTok and Instagram at stewards_office, and I will see you guys the next time you're summoned to the Stewards office.